Welcome to the Win All Day Everyday podcast presented by Prairie Hockey Academy. It is a great day for hockey. It's a great day to be listening to a podcast where we are sitting around the table talking about leadership and helping you identify the things that you need to excel at life and in the sport of your choice. For us, it's about hockey. But Justin, we're deep into it. It's deep into the Christmas season. Everywhere you go, the Christmas music is playing and everyone's running around chasing those Christmas gifts, and Prairie Hockey Academy continues to march forward, getting wins each day. So it's a great day for hockey, and it's a great day to be listening to our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe while you're listening, you're driving to your kid's Christmas recital. I mean, that's kind of the season that we're in, right? Trying to find times and dates to do everything in our life. And I hope people, I hope you just have some time to enjoy some of the Christmas season. I don't know about you, Barrett. I mean, we've got traditions around Christmas that we enjoy and get into, and I mean, for me, it's full on Christmas music now.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I don't know about you. It's not just when you go to Superstore, or any department store. It's for me, it's in the truck. For me, it's at the house when I get home, and my children are drinking me out of house and home with eggnog. So
and like the number one music song on the charts right now is a song from 1958, "Rocking Around the Christmas Tree."
Yeah, it's great.
Just flashing back, sitting around the dinner table. We got 3 billet players living with us, and each dinner time we're trying to kind of just spice up the conversation and whatnot. And we had Christmas music going on in the background. They're talking about Celine Dion and stuff. And I said, "Have you guys ever listened to the Trans-Siberian Orchestra?"
Yeah, that's good too.
And they thought I was an alien. So I told Ziggy, I said, "Ziggy, play us some Trans-Siberian," and we're sitting there eating our chicken and pasta, just rocking out. It was so much fun. So
well, tonight around the table, tell them to play Louis Armstrong.
Yeah, there we go.
Some Christmas by Louis Armstrong.
Kind of slow the pace down around the table.
Yeah, I don't know. That's not that slow. It gets pretty bumping.
Well, listeners out there, we're thankful that you've joined us. We want to encourage you to keep hitting that like button, subscribe to each of our channels on Spotify and YouTube and whatever else is out there. Yeah. Give us your feedback. We got an episode coming up in the next week here where we want to be able to answer some of your questions, and we've been getting a lot of questions, so we're going to try and work our way through some of that. But you're more than welcome to continue sending those questions in. We're excited for today's guest. I've had a long time friendship with this dude who has got some deep roots in Western Canada. For all of our Regina Pats listeners out there, and maybe even some the Rivalry Moose Jaw Warrior fans, you're going to love this combination.
This guy. Absolutely,
it's great to have with us. He was a member of the Regina Pats from 2000 to 2002, was coached by 2 of our previous guests, Lorne Molleken, Mooner, and Stanley Cup champion Bobby Lowe's, and was a starter in the Memorial Cup. So, Mr. Chad Davidson, welcome to our podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm sure I'm excited for this show because there's going to be lots of great stories. As you know, a lot of our listener base here in Saskatchewan, is dialed right into what's going on with the Moose Jaw Warriors. 3 of their players getting invites to World Juniors and having a really good season, and lots of connections to academy hockey here through this region and stuff like that, which ties you into it as well. But you're now the chief operating officer with Train Developments. You're building apartment complexes everywhere. You used your Western Hockey League scholarship money to get some education there in Calgary at SciAS. Played some hockey in the ACAC with those dudes, and now you find yourself in Kelowna, and you got a couple boys that are attending an academy out there. Want to just kind of give us an update on where life is at for you?
Yeah, we've what a whirlwind. It's funny, you talk about my days in Regina and at Satan. It's like that was 20 plus years ago. That's incredible to think back, but yeah, we've been in Kelowna here after spending about a decade in Medicine Hat. We moved out to Kelowna about 8.5 years ago. And, it was one of those things. I lived in Osoyoos actually as a kid in the Okanagan here and just loved the lake life and picking apples right off the tree. It was a really cool part of my growing up. So my wife and I, when the time came where we were looking to move, thought, you know what? Why not try and bring some of that Okanagan perspective and Okanagan upbringing for our boys? So yeah, we moved out here. Boys, I'm a hockey guy, so it was like never a question, I guess, that they were going to play hockey. It wasn't forced on them. They just, there's mini sticks in the house from the time you're about 6 months old, right? And that's just how you grow up in a hockey house. So they came by it naturally, and it's just been amazing to watch as they've grown up here and developed through the Kelowna minor hockey system, and now both of them playing academy hockey at the Okanagan Hockey Academy in Penticton, which is just down the road here. My wife and I, we also have a third child, our daughter, Brielle. She's just getting into ringette this year. She's 7, loving that, loving skating. Shocker, it's a skater in the house. So it's been, it's been a ton of fun. It's a real cool time though for my wife and I to watch as our boys are maturing teenagers, and seeing them just loving the game and loving what they're doing. And it's really, that in school, that's their lives, and they love every minute of it. So it's been, it's pretty cool times right now in the Davidson house. Yeah.
Well, let's just unpack your hockey journey for a little bit to help our guests understand kind of where you landed on the doorstep of the Regina Pats prior to coming to Regina in 2000 and play for the Mem Cup hosted Regina Pats with Lorne Molleken as your coach. You were in Olds, I believe it was, in the Alberta Junior Hockey League. And prior to that, you played some AAA. Obviously, I think it was out of Cochrane at the time that you were playing. But you did get a call up, right, to Regina during that time. I wanted to share the story because I think it's actually a powerful testament of not having a great performance, right? Mm-hmm. I think your stats line shows that it's .167 save percentage and 15 goals against in that one game. I'm pretty sure it wasn't 15 goals against. Lorne probably yanked you after one shot or something like that. But 2 years later, you're starring for them in the Memorial Cup final, right? So walk us through what it was like to go from the Alberta Junior League to being on a Mem Cup hosting team and sort of the pressures that came with that and trying to really build your career through the junior ranks.
Yeah, I might even start a little earlier than that. Like, I was never one of those kids that was 10 years old playing on the rep team. I played house hockey right through my first year of real rep hockey was my second year Pee Wee. And in those days with the age group shift, that's like first year Bantam for kids today, right? So pretty long in the tooth kind of in my minor hockey career at that point to finally play rep. But played a year of Pee Wee AAA in South Okanagan and Osoyoos, actually. And then the following year, we played Bantam AA. We won provincials. And in those days, that was the WHL draft year, right? It was first year Bantam. So we happened at, small little Osoyoos, 5,000 people, Oliver, just another 5,000 people combined, usually a tier 3 organization. We had a tier 3 AAA or tier 1 Pee Wee team and a tier 2 Bantam team just because of the birth year. You may not remember the name, Chuck Kovasu. He's the same age as me. We were both from that town. Derek Ruck is another name who you'd recognize the last name because his twins are going to be the next big thing in the Western Hockey League. Right. But he's the same age. So we had this kind of freakish birth year in Osoyoos that meant that we got to play up a bit from where that organization normally would be and got probably some attention from scouts that otherwise, not many scouts those days even would be at a single A event or a hockey game, but in that time playing up that point got us in front of the right people. So, that translated, moved to Alberta, played AAA, like you said, actually won the Max tournament, or Circle K now, I guess is what they call it, and had some success there. But that year is the year that the infamous call up, as you mentioned. That was 5 goals in one period on, I think, 7 shots. It was not a pretty performance. And there was a guy you may have heard of on the other side of that game, with Medicine Hat Tigers is who he played, who was a 15-year-old and finished with a 3rd star of that game, Jay Bomeister. Our careers kind of went like this, went separated from there. That was the departure point. But it was really fortunate that caught Regina's eye at the time and got on their protected list. Didn't get drafted. They had a pretty highly touted goaltender that was an 82 birth year as well. Had been drafted in the 2nd round out of Saskatoon, who he got the first couple looks that, what would have been my 16 and 17-year-old year. So that 17-year-old year, I went to Olds. And that junior A hockey experience for a guy like me who probably needed some polishing, like I said, hadn't played a ton of years of rep, hadn't in those days, goalie coaching was few and far between. And my parents never had a ton of cash anyway, so it's not like I was in goalie schools all summer. So that year in the AJ, really, it was a huge growth year. Got to play like 40 plus games as a 17-year-old rookie in the junior A league there. And I can still remember the day though, when Todd Ripplinger came through town. Todd was the head scout for the Pats at the time. He's actually really ironically now he's scouting with Moose Jaw, and I've got to reconnect with him. But they came through Olds with a standard player agreement to sign right around the Christmas time, Christmas season there. And it was like, hey, we're hosting Memorial Cup next year. We'd like you to be a part of this squad. And it was just like, well, how do you say no? How? And couldn't sign quick enough. So yeah, it just went from playing Pee Wee house hockey, and it felt like in a whirlwind of 3-4 years, all of a sudden you're signing with a team that's about to host the biggest tournament, really, I think, in North American hockey. So it's a pretty cool thing to think back on now.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously, if people look further down on your elite prospects, it comes up. You got really great numbers when you played for those 2 years in Regina, right? Like, you had some good performances and really turned your game around to give you that opportunity just to stay, right? It was just because Rip liked you as a dude. You still had to perform, and you did that with under some great pressure as a young guy coming in a pressure packed season. Like, they got to win. It's home ice and everything else. How would you say, looking back on it now, how did some of that pressure that you had then as a 17, 18-year-old, how has that prepared you now to be, a chief operating officer of a multinational company?
Oh man, I talk about this all the time. It's one of those things. Even the owner of the company I operate here talks about it, and just you have to learn. And you guys know this as former athletes yourselves and coaches, is you really have to learn to distill all that pressure and noise into a performance. Like, how do you take all of that? You can't make it go away. You're not going to wish it away. How do you take all of that and just say, in spite of that, I'm going to focus on what needs to be focused on and distill this into a performance, into meeting an expectation in crunch time. And really, at the time as a kid coming up through junior hockey, I don't think there's many kids. Maybe there's some real mature ones out there who know or have some awareness of what's going on, but you don't really know that's what's happening. But you're really getting baked in a pressure cooker and learning those skills. And I was fortunate. We talked about Mooner to have a coach who he knew he had a rookie goalie, and I can just remember, and he's still my, thinking back, favorite coach I've ever had, because he just knew the right thing to say. He would know the right, he just imbued a sense of calm and confidence in a young guy coming in. Anytime I'd start, he was just like, it was never a doubt that I was going to perform. He was always your hype man going out and in his way, and it's interesting. If you get the right guidance at that right time, if you're in the pressure cooker, you get the guidance, you get the opportunity. That's really what builds it. And that's now, to this day, when I'm having hard days in the office or dealing with real high pressure situations, I actually get calmer.
Yeah, it's a great story. And we've experienced that here with Mooner being a part of our academy. And I'm sure, Justin, you've got some similarity stories of your dealing with Lorne over the time of bringing him on board.
Yeah, you're right. Lorne just, he's, I think, he would be proud. I mean, I think you heard him, you mentioned listening to him on the podcast, and just even his, as he sat here and reflected on some of it, just to go back and just say, I didn't really understand what it meant at the time, but now I'm really proud to have been called a player's coach. Mm-hmm. Right, as he reflects on his career, and and just so many players and men that I talk to now reach out and say the same thing you just said, Chad, and that's that Mooner had such a great impact in my life because he was a calming presence, he believed in me. He inspired that confidence so I could just go out and perform. And I think Lorne did that for us at Prairie Hockey Academy. He joined us at Christmas of 2018. And I remember he, walking into the arena with his little San Jose Sharks bag that was hand stitched, 100 years ago, and with his skates in it. That he's still wearing these old CCM tacks, and they from when he was with the Blackhawks, I think. But he, as he walked in, and every time he just worked inside of our office with our staff, it was just, there was so much confidence in it because you're right, he knew what to say. He was encouraging of everyone, from the equipment manager to any assistant coach or the cook in the cafeteria. He'd make sure to stop in as we were in the cafeteria just to thank her, to say how great this meal was. Mm-hmm. He was very intentional. And I think somebody asked me recently about leadership and what I thought the best top 3 traits of a leader were, and I just said I think number 1 has to be intentionality. I mean, if you have intentionality, and if you're living with intentionality, which is what I look at a guy like Mooner, was what he does and everything he does, then I think you're intentional about using all your other traits, right? And intentional about your integrity and, including others and things like that. So that's Lorne. I didn't have the opportunity to play for him, but to coach with him and alongside of him, it's been pretty rich.
Yeah. I love what you said there about, whether it's the worker in the cafeteria, it didn't matter. Like I think that's probably summarizes what I was trying to say very well, is I never felt like the rookie goaltender, like I was clearly, but in his eyes, I never felt like he viewed me that way. He viewed me as, if I was going into the net that night, I was the guy, and I came into a team with a goalie in front of me who was a 7th round draft pick of the Boston Bruins, right? Like it was probably a pretty big difference for the team the nights I went in the net, But for him, he never once gave me that indication that he felt that. So that was pretty cool. Pretty cool.
That's really cool. I feel like I just had this conversation with a dad recently about in junior hockey at times, we don't always, there's a lot of coaches out there that don't live by that. They live by this old rule that you have to earn your keep, that you should know that you're the rookie goalie. And don't go screw up now, right? Giving you a chance, don't mess this up and make me look bad. This type of mentality, almost, whether it's said or not said, it's definitely portrayed. And and sometimes I wonder why. Why do we live like that as leaders or as coaches, running a business or anything? Why would we instill that into somebody that we're looking for a great performance out of? A project manager on your staff underneath of you, like, hey, this project's worth a lot. We're sticking our neck out if you screw this up. Is that really what you want to say before they go into that? You know what I mean? Yet it seems like there's a certain group of junior hockey coaches out there still that you got to earn your keep. You need to be a 2nd or a 3rd year vet before they're going to give you trust.
Yeah. Well, I love, you guys talk a lot about transformational coaching versus transactional coaching. And that's it in a nutshell, right? You're trying to transform these athletes, these kids. And how can you do that when you're partially tearing them down, right? You got to be building them up. No matter how you feel throwing the 17-year-old rookie into the net in a big game, you got to give him your best in that moment, right? So
yeah, for sure. Speaking of pressure, you guys, you and your wife, you got 3 kids, as you mentioned. Your oldest, Micah, a bit of a stud himself. Fair to say he's better now than you were at that age?
Absolutely. He's been a better skater than I ever was for at least 2 years now.
Okay. But talk about, just to get people caught up, Micah is a property of the Moose Jaw Warriors, right, Chad?
Yeah.
And he's just coming off of a great performance at the WHL Cup with Team BC. And of course, he's playing there at the academy in the Okanagan and with the U17 prep team and having a great year. And soon he's going to be on the other side of that Regina Moose Jaw rivalry. He's going to be, standing in the pipes here at the stadium in Moose Jaw. So there's probably lots of emotions for you, you know, to even consider part of that, what that's going to look like. But obviously you've still got some buttons on your shirt. A couple of them probably popped off with being so proud of what your kid's doing. Just talk about his journey and how you and your wife have sort of raised him to kind of, you know, keep those high expectations rolling, even though he's had some early success.
Yeah, he's got a different story than I've got. Like I mentioned I came up in a family with not much for resources and no goalie coaching. Well, he's had that opposite. He's had the benefit of a dad who knows the position. And although I haven't been his goalie coach now in a few years, early on, it was a great way to just teach him the basics. So from a pretty young age, he's played at the high levels. He was the starting goalie for the BC team in the Brick tournament in Edmonton, like that, as far back as 10 years old. He's had a different type of expectation on him than I ever did, and as a dad, bringing him up, I was probably a little too invested, a little too interested in his development at a young age, and looking back now, I'm a totally different goalie dad today than I was when he was 9 and 10 and learning the position. But yeah, he's really, one of the things that I learned early on was I had to give him space. It had to be his desire, not my desire. And so often I'd see that in especially young kid spring elite hockey and those sorts of environments, where you're watching this kid and then you're watching the parents in the stands and you're trying to decide who wants it more. I think mom and dad might want it more than Charlie on the ice here, and so I had a bit of a realization at 11 or 12 years old that, hey, this kid wants it. If I keep pushing him as hard as I am, he might not want it. I might replace his internal motivation with my own. So I had to back off. I actually haven't been his goalie coach. It kills me, by the way, to spend $150 an hour on goalie coaching when I know that I've goalie coached for years, right? But
right.
But I learned at about 13 years old that this guy, he needs to learn from a different voice. I need to be his supporter. I need to be the guy in his corner, not the guy telling him, hey, your glove position needs to be this, or your position when this happens in the play needs to be this. It was, that was been a big learning for me. And still something where even today, driving home after a game, it's a conscious bite of the tongue, right? To say, good job, bud. You did awesome. How did you feel? Those sorts of things. And it's so awesome to see now, as I've taken that approach. I can still remember his first year at Academy being, trying this hands-off approach, really getting good at it. And the first time in the car on the way home, we're driving back from Penticton to Kelowna, and we're going through, I think, Summerland, which is about 10 minutes outside of Penticton. And he turned quiet in the car. Wasn't a great game. And he says, so, Dad, what should I have done in this situation? I was like, oh, wow. I didn't have to say anything all these years. He was just waiting for me to give him the airtime to ask,
Okay. Yeah.
and pretty cool to see. But he's super driven. Like I think his average in term 1 here at school was like 97.25. He's tops on his team, and he's on the off ice leaderboard. They have a leaderboard in the gym for, there's kids 2 years older on his team, but he's on that leaderboard, I think 3 or 4 different times for different jumping power and things that, goalie legs, goalie quads, so it's cool to see he's developed his own, like he wants it. He absolutely wants it. And I don't have to worry about his motivation. I just have to worry about his, mental health and making sure he's feeling supported and knows that Dad loves him, whether he lets in 5 or gets a shutout.
Right. And a lot of our listeners out there that we've come to learn are your age and your age bracket and likely have kids that maybe are at academies, or their kids are at that cusp in their career where they realize they're probably pretty good, and they maybe are in a too small of a town, and they're looking at maybe some academy things. And so the parents are sitting there sort of, I'm sure what you and your wife had to wrestle through with, do we keep them here and just kind of let them, progress through that? Or is it now time to kind of invest in that next level, external goalie coaching, academy hockey, so he's on the ice every day, those type of things. And so I know that there's a lot of parents out there listening that have kids that you feel are sort of in that same ballpark, like they're a pretty decent player and they're, top 2 or 3 on their team, and they always get those whispers around the rink of like, oh, like so-and-so's kid's going to the show and blah, blah, blah. But, I think for parents growing up, there's a ton of pressure to make the right decision, right? And I know for you and your wife, you guys would have had to wrestle with that same thing. Like, yeah, it's an extra investment and you want to give them all this extra advice and stuff like that. But talk about how you guys have journeyed that with Micah and your other son that's playing at the academy as well. But more so even just you mentioned about their mental health and helping them understand that, mom and dad are providing this, but you've got to be the guy that's hungry every day for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's really a message we spent a lot of time unpacking with our 13-year-old this year. He'd been playing, obviously, Pee Wee hockey. It's his first year, or U13 hockey, I guess, his first year of U15 this year. And coming into the last winter season, talking to him about, hey, listen, bud, academy hockey I think it's by far the best track for kids for their development if they want it, because it is all encompassing. You're straight from school to academy, you're doing off ice, it's daily, you're with the same group of kids. You've got to really want it. So, we journeyed that more so with our 13-year-old of saying, hey, bud, do you really want this? Are you willing to put in that consistent effort that makes mom and dad feel good about that investment in putting you in this academy environment? And he showed he wanted it. He had a heck of a winter season his last year before U15, showed tremendous growth through the year, and really showed that he was ready for that lifestyle. Now, I think it's the best lifestyle for a young hockey player because I drop my kids off in the morning. They get their schooling, their on ice, their off ice training, physio appointment if they needed it, study hall lots of days, all these things, and I've got them home for dinner. And we're not running anywhere after dinner. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing environment. But it's an environment such that kid's got to want it. It's maybe my earlier point of talking about them having their own intrinsic, internal, personal motivation and desire is so important. And so we just talked a lot with them, like let them understand, not, hey, you got to do this, you got to score goals to prove that you're ready for this. It's not that at all. It's really, this is what that lifestyle is. Do you really want it? And then you just watch and see, do they really want it? And fortunately for both my boys, they've really thrived under that. They've showed they want it. They've shown that it's their motivation and it's their goals.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We've had a few other guests on recently, going back to Ryan Hofer with his boys being prodigies in the sport of volleyball, and how Ryan just talked about how, they'd have those conversations and he would be always tempted to be given that advice, which lane to come in and hit from and all those other things. But he felt the priority for him was just making sure his boys stayed humble as they progressed through it. And, with Micah getting that early success, and continued success, and now on his pathway to the Western Hockey League here with the Moose Jaw Warriors potentially. What are some things that you guys have put in or helped guide him with in terms of just really being grounded and humble to, not get too far ahead of himself and be sort of like a prodigy that crashes, so to speak?
Right. Yeah, I think one of the biggest things and my wife is great at this. She didn't come from a high-level athletic background herself, and really reinforcing the message that who you are as a person, how much mom and dad love you, has zero to do with your performance on ice. you know, and that works whether they've had a great game or a poor game, you know. You're not any better of a person because you've got a 930 whatever save percentage. You're no better there than you are if you have an 880 save percentage. Like, there's really no bearing on who you are as a person related to your performance, your results on the ice. And really what we're interested in is raising good people, you know, two young, respectful, polite young men who are, to your point, humble, you know, who are really just focused on being good people that happen to play hockey, as opposed to totally identifying as hockey players. I think there's a danger in that. You know, you talk to a lot of kids. I coached young kids for years that, you know, I think they see themselves, some kids, as, who are you? I'm a hockey player. You know, it doesn't matter what sort of environment you ask in that question, whether at school, at home, or at the rink, that if that becomes your answer, that you're just a hockey player, well, now how you perform is your identity, right, you know, or a part of it anyway. And so my wife, I can't take credit here, has done just a remarkable job of consistently messaging that we want good people, we want good kids, and that has zero to do with the in-arena performance. It has a lot to do with how you are as a teammate and how you show up at the rink, but not what happens on the ice, win, lose, or draw. So yeah, like I say, I can't take the credit there. She's got just a fantastic perspective when it comes to that.
No, that's great. Really appreciate you sharing that. This next segment that we got coming up is our Guide and Provide segment, and it's where we ask our guests to come on and give us some advice for young players, for parents of, well, any age really, maybe even for some grandparents that might be out there. And then also for coaches to kind of give them some tips and advice on their journey. Is there any of those areas that you might want to give us some feedback on this today?
Yeah, it's. I think one thing definitely that comes to mind is just probably for young athletes and parents though too, who are you know, leading their kids through the athletic journey, is everyone. And just a reminder that everyone has their own development path. You know, I've got two very different boys on their development path. You know, one boy who, like I mentioned, he's had lots of accolades since a very young age, and another boy that hasn't, you know, but he's coming on strong now. He's showing a desire in the gym. He's having, you know, good results. And it's just one of those things, whether it's a physical maturity piece, some kids grow later, you know, and it's so easy to compare. As you're coming along, you see, oh, this kid's doing that, or this kid's doing that. And you see, especially with social media, you get on Puck Prospects or some of these guys, and you're like, hey, the best 2010 in the world out of Regina playing U18. And you're like, wow, that's amazing. But the danger for kids is, I don't know if they know how to process all that, you know, and they just start comparing themselves to these things that they see. And it's just this consistent reminder that your development path is unique to you. And you don't know where that ceiling is just because you're not on the brick team at 10 or on provincial team at 15, or, you know, that doesn't mean you don't have a future in the game if you want it, you know, and so easy to say that, so hard to believe it. But I've seen it. Like, I was a house hockey player who played in the Memorial Cup, you know, it's just one of those things that you might grow later. You know, you might this, that, or the other, but it's stick with it. If you love it, stick with it. Your path is your path. Guess what? If you work hard, you love the game, and you're a good teammate, you're going to do something fun with hockey. You know, not junior hockey's not in everyone's cards, but you're going to do something fun with it if you can just be patient in your own path.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that advice. I know that I get excited about our last segment of our shows, the Grandpa B story time. And for our listeners that were, you know, with us from the beginning episodes, we did share a story about a bunch of hockey players on a summer hockey camp journey that got into some Eat More and Coffee Crisp and
emptied the
Mr.
back of a
Biggs
trailer
and crushed about 100 chocolate bars in about an hour. And just for our listeners out there today,
This is a true story.
I can confirm that I'm not making this up because we've got another witness who actually partook and hasn't even, you can't even look at any more bar anymore because
no. To this day. Yeah, that was a cool summer. I mean, like Hockey Ministries International, I don't know if those opportunities still exist for kids to do these, traveling instruction tours, but that was a pivotal year for me as a person and as a hockey player. It was right before going to Regina, actually.
Right.
And I can remember that day well. I think he had us do a biathlon. We were at Eagles Nest Ranch in Medicine Hat, and we had to swim about 1,000 laps in the pool. And then the camp is set on a mountain, or a big hill, hill, Cypress Hills. We had to run to the bottom and back up. I don't know how far that was, but it felt like a full marathon.
A long time, yeah.
And then, of course, to cap it all off, we go and say, hey, we're having a chocolate bar eating contest. I guess we earned it. That was a ton of fun. But what a good example, right, of building a love for the game and the things that aren't just related to on-ice performance. That was such a great summer of working with other guys who just believed in the same things I believed, who were trying to get better, had different, aspirations for their hockey career. And you did a fantastic job leading that, Bear. I still have such great memories from different aspects. I would have never met my wife if not for that summer tour, actually.
Yeah, so, that's right too. And there's several guys that can tell that same story of Cupid that got played along the way. So I know also our listeners are really intrigued about the Regina Moose Jaw connection and just talk about, maybe there's some really cool things with some games that you played at the old Crush Can and back at the Agrodome and some of the rivalry games that you got to play in. Is there any kind of fascinating stories that you can share with us around that?
Yeah, I think there's one memory that always comes to mind when I think of the old Crush Can, and it was in my first year in Regina. I didn't play this game. I was on the bench, but it was a great game. Brian Sotheby. I'm trying to think of some of the names of the Warriors at the time. We had Bear Jackman and Philip Novak and Garth Murray and some real good players on our side. They had some, I forget all the names of the guys on their side, but a good team themselves. And we went into a game in overtime, and a regular season game. But pretty early on in the overtime, we managed to win the game. Well, what do you do when you win in overtime? The whole bench clears. Everybody goes out and celebrates around the goal scorer and on the ice. And we're all around celebrating. And then all of a sudden you start hearing, and pucks hitting the ice. Well, it was souvenir puck night at the Crush Can that night. And so as we're celebrating, we realize, oh no, we're getting bombarded. We better get the heck off of here. And so we
with legit pucks, not foam pucks. These are
yeah. So, it was a combination. I think there was some real pucks and some foam pucks, but that celebration quickly turned and then off the ice as quickly as we could before somebody took a puck in the dome. Yeah. And it was wild though, playing in that rink, because the visitors room was at the one end of the corridor. And the gate you went out was the whole length of the ice, and along that entire side was the lounge. Yeah. And those days you could smoke, right? So it was double doors be open. You'd be walking to the ice. You'd be getting chirped at by all the lounge. Walk through an absolute blue cloud to get to the ice, and now you're going to go perform. It's just like it's a different world. It was so what a barn of character. I'm actually glad for Micah's sake that it's a different rink because it wasn't the best facility. But also, I don't know, this fall, I might have spontaneously combusted if I'd walked into that place. It was nice for me as a Pat alumni to walk into a different Moose Jaw might get a camp. So, yeah.
It's true.
And what about any stories with Mooner or with Bobby in terms of just, you referenced Mooner being like one of your favorite coaches, and maybe just some moments there where you can reflect back on and just be like, yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember, there's a ton of stories. Like the thing that quickly jumps to mind, I guess, or first jumps to mind, is thinking back to that Memorial Cup. We as the host team had lost The other goalie played, and it not his fault, but we'd lost the first 2 games of that tournament. And to that point, and maybe it's still true today, but to that point, the host team had never gone 0-3 and eliminated. So lots of pressure. And, Donald Chikalis is the name of the goalie, a great goalie, just had, wasn't his fault. Maybe didn't have his best hockey necessarily that he'd wanted, but they felt like they needed to make a change. And so I can still remember hearing this buzz, you can't get away from it. It was, you go in your car, and in those days you listen to the radio. There was no Sirius FM or anything like that, right? And it's right on the radio. There's talk of, are they going to make a change? And, it was, I can just still remember that next morning going in and Lorne calling me into his office. And I think Brent Parker was there as well, the GM, and him just, Chad, sit down, and just very calmly, Chad, we're going to make a change in the goaltending position, and we're going to put you in for game 3. And, just him talking, I can't remember all his words, but just building me up in that moment. And of course, looking back, he had no choice. He's got this kid he's going to throw in. I better build this kid up. But his way was so fantastic, calm, and we believe in you. That was his message. And then he went out and he held the press conference where it announced it. And then, of course, I'm doing interviews thinking I don't even remember those interviews. Like my head was somewhere else for that day. But pretty cool experience where he was able to just kind of corral all the noise, bring me in, explain what was going to happen, explain his confidence in me, and then release me to it, and, right. Yeah. And just a phenomenal man. And, it's one of those things that's the high watermark for my playing hockey, hockey career. And I just really remember it with fond memories. So,
yeah. And memory serves me right. Did you guys win that game 3?
Yeah, it's funny. We ended up winning that game. I got 3rd star of the game. Like, it was like this whirlwind. And then because we won that game, we played in a tie break. And the tie break was against the Ottawa 67s, who beat us in the round robin, and ended up getting a shutout in the tiebreaker game, and eventually lost in the semifinal game against Val-d'Or, who eventually went on to lose to Red Deer in the final. But had we won that game against Val-d'Or, we would have actually played 4 games in 3.5 days, because the way the schedule worked, it was a tiebreak Friday, semifinal Saturday, and then final at noon on Sunday.
Right,
so
right.
It was going to be a heck of a just run up to it with the final round robin game. It had been Thursday. So anyway, it was a cool moment, cool experience. And I forever have Lorne to thank for putting his trust in me and putting me in that situation.
And I believe, was Rod Peterson the voice of the Pats at the time as well?
Yeah. Roddy Peterson was voice of the Pats for sure.
Yeah. And now he's off on his, he's created quite a journey for himself now, post Pats, post Rough Riders, and the top, really, I believe it's in North America, the top podcast and sports talk radio show right now down based out of Florida. So, Regina Pats have launched some really cool stories, and you're one of them, Chad. And we're really thankful that you've taken the time out of your day, out of your schedule. I know you got a flight to catch and buildings to build and kids to continue to raise and to be great young men and great leaders. So I'm thankful that you've taken this time out today to spend with our listeners and invest some advice to them and just really just be vulnerable with your story. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me on. I hope, able to share some perspective for some parents out there that, your kid's journey is his journey, and how do you act as a support and not dragging them along for that ride. So, no, it's been great advice, and look forward to getting some feedback and continuing to see Micah out here, as he gets a chance to
throw that Moose Jaw Warriors jersey on in the coming years. We'll be just down the road here to be able to watch and cheer them on and whatnot. So maybe we'll get you guys building some apartments over in this area so you can hang out and watch too.
There you go. Any excuse, I'm there.
Right on. Well, thanks for your time, Chad, and all the best to you. And again, to our listeners, thank you for spending some time in your drive or sitting around the table with your family listening to the show today. We really want to encourage you to keep, sharing our episodes with your friends and family. Any time that you can do that, and it helps us get our listeners expanded, that listening base out there, so we can continue to grow the program and the podcast. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, all that other fun stuff that's at the bottom. Look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, have a great day.